William Henry Harrison, the World Trade Center, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is April 4th, 2022. It is the 94th day of the year. There are 271 days left in this fine year. It's the 14th Monday in the 15th week and the 16th day of spring. We got 78 days till summer. And you're still in Aries if it's your birthday. It's National Hug a News Person Day. I didn't know this was a thing till just now. Warm up those hugging muscles because April 4th, we're showing our appreciation for news people in a big way. Yeah, that's cheesy and that's off their website. But apparently you're supposed to go hug a news person. I don't know how keen the news people are with this one. Especially if they're like doing a report on the side of the road and you run up and start hugging them. That could be considered assault by most people. All right, let's see what else April 4th has given us. 1818, the United States Congress, which would be the Second Continental Congress, adopts the flag of the United States with 13 red and white stripes and 1 star for each state. We only had 20 at the time. 1841, William Henry Harrison dies of pneumonia, becoming the first president of the United States to die in office and setting the record for the briefest administration ever. Vice President John Tyler succeeds Harrison as president. The presidency of William Henry Harrison was both brief and interesting. I mean, he was 68 years old when he took office, which 68 back then, the average life expectancy in 1841 was actually 40 years old. So this is the equivalent of like a 105-year-old man taking office right now. He was basically a fossil, but he was also a general and everyone appreciated him, and he ran an outstanding campaign. When they tried to make him sound like an alcoholic, he leaned into it, and he said he loved hard cider, and that became a song that was part of his campaign. It was very much a modern campaign for what we see these days. Whole bunch of mudslinging. He also holds the record for the longest presidential inauguration speech. 2 hours in the rain, without an umbrella, without an overcoat, just getting soaked. Shockingly, he developed pneumonia. He died about a month later. His wife is the only first lady that was born after the completion of the White House to never stay in the White House. She was still back in Ohio, packing up to move her things to Washington, D.C. when her husband died. Even though he had the shortest presidency, which 30 days, and he probably was sick most of the time, so he didn't really do anything, he's still remembered by more people than a lot of other presidents. I mean, who really knows who Chester Alan Arthur is, or James A. Garfield, or Rutherford B. Hayes? How about Millard Fillmore? Anyone remember him? Yes, so because this man was extremely long-winded and died in office, that's why he's remembered by so many people. 1887, Angora, Kansas elects Susan M. Salter as the first female mayor in the United States. 1949, the Cold War. 12 nations signed the North Atlantic Treaty, creating the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated by James Earl Ray at a motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this should really be our deep dive, but we sort of went over it on his birthday. So maybe next year we'll throw in the assassination and make that the deep dive. 1969, Dr. Denton Cooley implants the first temporary artificial heart. 1973, the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City are officially dedicated. 1975, Microsoft is founded as a partnership between Bill Gates and Paul Allen in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Really, it doesn't get going until they move to just outside of Seattle. 1984, President Ronald Reagan calls for an international ban on chemical weapons. So chemical weapons in warfare, which I had to go through these classes. I was infantry, and you got to learn all about the different weapons. And they talk about all the different chemical weapons that have been used from, World War I. Actually, go back even further than that. They used to launch diseased pigs over the walls in the medieval times. Just horrible things. But the modern chemical warfare is just ugly. I mean, there's blood agents, there's all kinds of different things that will get in your body, nerve agents that will just kill you in the most painful ways. And it's a good thing. Chemical weapons should be banned. And when you use them, your country should be taken away from you or something because it's that bad. 2020, China holds a national day of mourning for martyrs, as they called them, who died in the fight against the novel coronavirus disease outbreak. Movies released on April 4th, 2016, The Jungle Book. This is a really good movie. It wasn't like a cartoon or anything like that. It was, computer graphics and stuff, but it looked real, and it was a very good story. They had the original Jungle Book, I think, back in the 1940s or 50s, maybe 60s, which was a cartoon, and it was a really interesting one. I remember it as a kid, and I really liked it. I actually read the book in high school. I didn't know it was a real book, like a big book. I just thought it was on this list by mistake, so I grabbed it, and I marked myself down as I was going to read it that semester. Turns out it's like 300, I don't know, 250, 300 pages. I honestly thought it was going to be under 100 pages, but no, surprise, surprise. But I did enjoy it. The movie, though, had Scarlett Johansson, Bill Murray, Christopher Walken, Ben Kingsley, Gary Shandling. Had that Idris Elba, and he's around all the time in all kinds of movies. I can never pronounce his name. And then Lupita Nyong'o. I hope I got that right, too. Born on April 4th, 1965, Robert Downey Jr. He is one of my favorite actors. Just maybe his acting isn't as good as some of the other ones that I really enjoy, but he is just such a character, and he's so good at what he does. Anyway, I think the best casting of any role ever was him as Iron Man. If you know the story about Tony Stark in the 80s, he was a Marvel character. He's the guy, he's Iron Man basically, and that's who Robert Downey Jr. plays. But Robert Downey Jr. had his problems with alcohol and getting in trouble. Well, in the comic books, long before they ever picked Robert Downey Jr. to play him, so did Tony Stark in the comic books. Their life kind of followed this same path. I think one of my favorite movies that nobody really enjoyed with him was Chaplin. I thought he did a great job. Recently, I saw him when the Avengers came out, so it was a couple of years ago, and it was all of the Avengers were on, like Ellen DeGeneres. And it was during COVID, so they had guests would call in and do a video thing, and they'd ask a question. So this one lady gets on there, out of all of you, who's the biggest prima donna? And everyone points at Robert Downey Jr., and he just sits there with his arms folded, doesn't say a thing for like 10 seconds, this awkward pause. Then he just goes, get that bitch off the screen. It was just perfect. And they all laughed. It was great. Anyway, so it's Robert Downey Jr.'s birthday today. Died on April 4th, 1999, Early Wynn, 8-time Major League Baseball All-Star pitcher who ended his career with exactly 300 wins. He was signed by the Washington Senators after showing up at a tryout in Florida at the age of 17. He became famous for knocking down hitters with what they call a brushback pitch, which he throws it really close to them and they duck and they fall down. Yeah, he used to do that a lot. He won the Cy Young Award in 1959. Later in life, he had heart attacks and stroke, and his health declined after the death of his second wife in 1994. He was moved to an assisted living facility in Venice, Florida, where he died in April of 1999. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, and be nice to each other.